You've already done the inner work. You've deprogrammed so much of the old paradigm, the pressure, the pushing, the proving, and now it's time to learn to lead from your power and the kind that comes from regulation, from clarity, and from confidence. So by the end of this hour, you're going to feel something shift. You'll know not just in theory, but in your body what it means to build success that supports you rather than drains you. You're going to hear real stories and strategies from leaders who have done exactly that, who've moved from exhaustion to embodiment, from pressure to power, and they've built thriving businesses without abandoning themselves. So if you're ready to stop performing success and start living it, take a deep breath. Ground, anchor. Might be a great time to take a sip of water because this is your hour. This is where the hustle finally heals. And so let's welcome our incredible experts. We have Ariel Griglin, we have Phil Kaplan, we have Nicole Lewis-Keeber, and Christopher Lee Maher, four grounded visionaries who blend science, psychology, and soul to show us what success looks like when it's built from wholeness. And they are really showing up for you. And before we dive in, because we are doing this event as a fundraiser, and you've probably felt it this week that motivation comes and goes. It's great when you're in an environment like this, but what happens next week? Right? Do you go back to where you were before? So without co-regulation, which is this biological imperative to growth, without real ongoing support, the chance of burnout increases by 250%. And so that is why I created the fundraiser VIP upgrade. So it's for women who are done with doing this alone, who want the structure, the community that Deborah was just talking about, and the strategy to actually build their client base without relying on social media. So when you upgrade to VIP, you're going to get a 5-day live training with me where I'll teach you my 5 steps to 6-figure framework for feminine business. You'll get a one-on-one business breakthrough call with a certified coach to design your 2026 ascension plan that will give you that clarity and actionable client generation strategy. And then you also get the lifetime access to stream these roundtables, which aren't they incredible, on demand. So you want to grab that. It's just $97. Yeah, right? Nicole, like that is so generous. So your upgrade also helps us reach our fundraising goal to support female entrepreneurs who are still rebuilding after the LA fires. So if you're ready for co-regulation, clarity, and consistent clients, tap the link in the chat now and upgrade to VIP. And let's begin. Okay, so Ariel Griglin is a women's health and transformation coach who has also been driven to guide women towards becoming lighter for as long as she can remember in body, mind, and spirit. She is a former bodybuilder turned holistic healer, and she blends science and soul and step fully into their strength, freedom, and power. Ariel, how are you today?
Hello, Rose. I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. Whereabouts in the world are you tuning in from?
I am in South Florida, about an hour north of Miami.
Nice. Lovely. Is it
hmm
warm there right now? It's a little bit chilly here today in California.
Well, we had some 60-degree weather a few days ago. So for me, that's winter, but we're back to
Right.
80s and 90s.
I love it. I love it. I'm so happy to have you here. We also have Phil Kaplan, who is a visionary in human betterment, who's redefined what true transformation means. With over 30 years of impact, appearances in over 1,000 TV and radio broadcasts, and more than 150,000 lives changed, Phil bridges science and spirit to elevate health, purpose, and prosperity. His mission is to help leaders and practitioners create real results that inspire lasting human evolution. Phil, how are you doing? If you want to unmute, I'm not that good at lip reading.
Did I unmute?
Yeah, there you go. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing great. Pleasure to be here with you and all of these women. I happen to be about 10 minutes away from Ariel, so we work very closely together, just so we're fully transparent. And changing people's lives is what I do. Now, I know everybody here does that at some level, but I've learned a lot of life lessons, and every single one felt like a horrible mistake until it came around. So now I'm at a place that I've collected all those lessons, and I can help people either in entrepreneurship or in physical change separate the right from the wrong. And that's really what it's all about, learning the right things to do.
Yeah, we need that. We need that. And I would be so curious about, the masculine, the feminine energy in partnership and how that really provides such a great foundation for both of your businesses. So wonderful to have you both here. And
Thank you.
Nicole Lewis Kiva is a licensed therapist who helps entrepreneurs confront the hidden toll of business ownership. With deep roots in trauma work and leadership, she challenges hustle culture and rewrites the rules of success, bringing sharp insight and unfiltered truth to the messy intersection of mental health and entrepreneurship. Boy, is that needed. Hey, Nicole, how are you?
Hey there. It's so good to see you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. We were talking on the previous panel about how being an entrepreneur is one of the best modes of personal development because you're really in real time seeing whether the inner work you've done has been the real stuff or if it's been all talk. So I think I'm really happy to have you on this roundtable today. And next we have Christopher Lee Maher. Christopher is a former Navy SEAL, and he's an author, entrepreneur, speaker, coach, and innovator in the fields of health, wellness, and longevity. He developed a comprehensive system of total healing and integration called True Body Intelligence. With his help, his clients have succeeded at the highest levels in sports, entertainment, business, medicine, and international politics. Christopher, how are you today? If you would like to unmute, Monsieur.
Hear that.
Yeah, there we go. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. I see your face all the time because yesterday we had Jennifer Butler speaking,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so it's a small world, and I'm so happy to have you here and in your beautiful colors as well. So
Thank
you
you.
for
Yes,
joining.
I'm what's called a warm dynamic winter.
Yeah, love that. So we have the winter has the personality, right? The kind of like cuts through, right? See, very discerning. So I'll be so curious to see how that winter energy shows up in your answers today. You can tell I'm a spring, right? You can tell I'm a
Yes.
spring.
I was
So
married to a spring.
oh, you were. Yes. They're great. My partner's a winter. It's a great counterpoint. I love that. So our audience have submitted surveys, they've answered surveys to really tell us, okay, what is it that they most need support with in their business? And there were two things that really stood out to me. One was like, is it truly possible to lead a business that feels good, one that where I don't sacrifice everything else in my life in order to succeed, most notably health. And the second question is, like, I don't have a roadmap. How can I actually create consistent clients in my business? So those are really where we're going to start and dive in, and then I have some individual questions. And for our audience, we also have the chat. So if you have a question for one of these experts, pop it in the chat because you never know, they might be able to just like type a response. And I know we had a load of that going on last session with the astrology and everyone like, I'm a Pisces, I'm a Sagittarius, right? So definitely engage in the chat. They are showing up for you. And so the women in this audience, they are deeply self-aware. They've done the inner work. They have decolonized the internalized patriarchal conditioning of performance, corporate sacrifice, and hustle culture that is rampant in the entrepreneurial space. And I'm sure you've lived it, breathed it, experienced it. And so they're standing at the precipice of a new paradigm with no roadmap, asking, can I be successful without self-abandonment? Can I scale my impact without losing authenticity? And can I sustain my energy, honor my body, and still thrive financially? So I know each one of you has navigated this journey yourself. And so my question really is it possible to lead a business that feels good? One that allows you to keep your integrity, stay healthy, belong to a nourishing community, and succeed financially. So perhaps you could share a pivotal moment from your journey where you navigated this successfully. So Ariel, we'll start with you.
Rose, it's a very interesting question that you posed because Bill and I were just chatting about it, that early when we met 8 years ago, it was actually the first question that I posed to him, that exact same thing. And growing up as a daughter of hippies, there was very much the belief that we can be happy, we can have peace, we can have love, but if money comes into the picture, that moves into mean or bad or evil or whatever those old belief systems were. So then, around the time I met Phil, I had just experienced this spiritual awakening and a lot of insights and destruction and all of it that I'm sure many of the women here can relate to. So as I'm journeying through these profound states of peace and interconnectedness, and knowing about Phil's background in business, spoiler alert, I'm kind of giving his answer to this, which is yes. He said, absolutely. And it's interesting because it's been about an 8-year journey for me of what I say is integrating that which I experience in that feminine realm, in the energetics, in my spiritual nature, and really bringing it into a very tangible reality of business. And I'll just share one more thing that I was mentioning yesterday. I couldn't identify this in the past, but now on the other side of it, I saw that there were times that I would be, in my feminine, flowy, divinely connected state. And then there were times I would get on a call and I would do a consult or a sales call, and I would become a totally different person. And then the moment I'd hang up that call, I'd go back to my like flowy, divine state. And I didn't even realize I was doing that type of separation until now that I'm on the other side of it, realizing I can be the same as I am in all experiences. I don't have to become a new person. And that feels very integrative. That feels really nice.
Yeah, I think there's and that really, it's not like an intentional thing, like I'm performing, but when we're having those dual personas, like I'm showing up this way, very serious on a call, on an enrollment call, and then I go back to being like my fun-loving, feminine, flowy self off that call. Then it can feel like a break in integrity. And what's so beautiful is finding that integration of like, actually, I can be all of myself all the time, and actually that's an asset to my business. And so yeah, I love that you asked that question before you started a business. Like, hey, I want to do this, but I don't want to do it in a way that it's going to really take away from the other areas of my life. So thank you for sharing that. And so Phil, what was this journey for you? I mean, as a man, I think it's a little bit different, but have you experienced the challenges in staying healthy, in really focusing on belonging to a community and leading your business and succeeding financially? Like, is it really possible to have it all? And have you navigated this?
Yes, 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 and yes. But I have to say this. I don't know that it's possible without periodic correction. Like, I don't know that anybody starts out and has this beautiful, successful, loving life, and money pours in, and they scale, and they're themselves, and they're happy, and they're sleeping 8 hours a night, getting to the gym in the morning. Ultimately, you get thrown, right? So I say this not to brag, just to kind of lay the groundwork. But I have helped over 15,000 people reverse chronic disease.
Wow.
Now, these are type 2 diabetics, people with hypothyroidism that were all told by their doctor, you will never get rid of this. You need to live on the medication. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. So that's a flaw in the medical system. And what I've learned, and this is a whole conversation itself, so I'll just put it out as a point, is we cannot heal in chaos. When we are in a state of chaos, vacillating between anxiety and exhaustion, we cannot heal. And when we can bring people back to a state of parasympathetic recovery or a state of correspondence, all of a sudden they awaken the healing mechanism within and life gets better. Well, I think the same thing is true in business, because if I think way back to the moment that people started recognizing me as successful, because it took a while to get there, I was frantic. I was living in chaos. I was busy, absolutely. And the busy felt good and everybody wanted me, but it burned me out. And I remember I would go to these time management workshops, and finally it hit me. I don't want to manage anything else. I'm managing my staff. I'm managing my accounts. I don't want to manage my time. I want to own my time. And that was a wake up for me, is I have the ability to create what's going to happen in my life. I don't have to be a victim of it. So people would say, you're so lucky you run your own business. I'm like, no, everyone's my boss. So every once in a while, I think when you start to elevate, you've got to take a step back and go, how do I get back to center out of the chaos? And I think that's a huge part of it at any level of business.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm just like, I love that parallel, of the needing to be in the parasympathetic or the ventral dominance in order to
Yeah.
heal. And I know you said the medical system's broken. I think it's working very well as a business, so, we're kind of like, but it is that similarity that shows up in business. If we're running in a fight flight response or an avoidant, shut down, exhausted response in our nervous system, in our business, we don't have the capacity for creativity, for solving problems, and we're playing out that chronic trauma response in our business. And so we might look busy and look successful, but inside it's deteriorating our health. And so I love that parallel. Go on, jump on it.
When you get back to center, you
Uh-huh.
awaken creativity. That's what I learned.
Yeah.
Like you can't create in that state of chaos. You can be
Yeah.
busy, but as soon as you free yourself, so I'm going to share one more experience. There was a time that I was very excited because I was getting a lot of accounts. I was designing health clubs and selling exercise equipment. And there was one deal that came to me for $30,000. It wasn't a big deal relative to what I was doing, but it was an easy one. So there was a few things about it that didn't feel right, but I did it. End of that story is it was a scam and they ripped me off for $30,000. Now, for the next 6 months, everything in my life fell apart. Everything. I mean, relationships and business. I was losing accounts. And then I went out on a boat with a friend of mine. He was laughing at how frantic I was. And he goes, Phil, I'm going to tell you 3 words that will change your life, but you got to listen to me. Let it go. And
Mm.
it didn't make any sense intellectually. It didn't make any sense rationally, but it was a moment of release. And once I let that go, things come back. So, every time it comes down to that same thing is when you're vacillating, you're not creative, you're not successful, you're not in charge. You've got to find the discipline to come back to center.
Absolutely. And to riff on that, I have a friend out here in Malibu who's in real estate, and he had somebody, excuse my language, but screw him over in a deal. And he's like, I can't hold on to this energy. So he was in a sympathetic activation and a fight flight, and he just jumped in the ocean and swam a mile. And moving that energy, he said he came back and he had this epiphany that that person who ripped him off had had childhood issues and it was nothing to do with him. Let it go. And then the deals, something else came in and it rebalanced and he was fine. And so really interesting nervous system regulation as it relates to entrepreneurship. Like that's where the gold is. So thank you for speaking into that. And Nicole, like the business therapist, like this is your jam, right? So did you design your business through a learning experience where, it wasn't, there was sacrifice, there was problems, it wasn't working. Do you have a pivotal moment that you can share, and how did you navigate that successfully?
Oh, yes. As you mentioned earlier, I always say that starting a business is a high dive into personal development, whether you like it or not. And it certainly was true for me. My backstory is that I was a therapist for 18 years, and I've worked with just about every population. And so as those systems are, they are built for burnout. They are not built for the individual. And so I ended up leaving doing direct practice because I needed a break. And so I started a business about 10 years ago working with small business owners and entrepreneurs at the intersection of money and trauma, and was doing really well. And about 2 years into my business, I started feeling like a failure, and there was no metric or there was nothing that would back up the fact I was failing. I was contributing to my household. I was becoming well known for what I was doing. I had clients. There was nothing to back up this inner feeling of I am a failure. No one's happy. This is not working. Getting the Sunday scaries, which, I didn't leave working for other people, as a therapist and social worker to feel that way on a Sunday. And so the pivotal moment for me was, it was a Monday morning because I'd had the Sunday scaries the night before. And I was reading the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I was really thinking about stopping my business because I felt like nothing I ever did was enough. It felt like a just ongoing churn. And I felt so burnt out already 2 years into this business. It is a magical book, Ariel. And what I recognized in reading a story in here that was actually Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer is in this book, and she talks about how she was teaching students, I think it was the incoming class on, um, gosh, I forget what the actual class, but it has to do with nature. Basically, she said, everyone raise their hand who loves nature. Everybody raise their hand. She said, how many of you think that nature loves you in return? No hands. And she said, we've got a problem here because you're about to spend all this time and effort and energy, an investment with something that you don't feel like that loves you back or that you have a relationship with. Like, this is a problem. And in that moment, I had this huge revelation of like, I am putting all this energy and time into something that I love, but I do not feel like loves me back. And I kind of started pulling the thread as a therapist would do. And what I realized is that I had recreated a traumatic relationship with my business, so that I was relating to my business from an old childhood wound, and that my business was actually playing the part of my critical parent. And once I recognized that, I began to create a framework on how to understand that when you start a business, you are entering into a relationship. It is not your baby. You are not your business. It is a relationship that you are building. And if you are not intentional about that, and if you don't understand that childhood trauma can embed itself in your business very easily, then we're more likely to default into those old roles of having a demanding and demeaning boss or parent be your business, as opposed to one that's supportive, welcoming, and loving. And so that's what I've spent the past 10 years in my business, is exploring the intersection of childhood trauma and entrepreneurship, because they're intimately connected. And one key component about that is that you are in a relationship and you are primed to recreate those roles, and that it does not have to be that way. So you can abuse yourself with your business if you are not paying attention.
Okay, so audience member, you've done a lot of inner work. You've probably done therapy, coaching, a lot of stuff, a lot of retreats, a lot of self-work, a lot of self-help books. So now, little prompt for you to ground this, what Nicole just shared. If your business is a character, if it's an archetype, if it's somebody, if it's a familiar figure to your childhood, what role is your business playing in relation to you right now? Because as you were talking, I had a big aha, Nicole. Even in my business, it's like, oh wow, how I like over function for my clients, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that as a child to get love, right? So look at those dynamics and look at how you are relating to your business. That's a huge breakthrough, and I'm sure it was for you. Thank you.
It was, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of how it can show up too. So
I'm
it's
sure.
important work to understand that everything is everything. We bring all of who we are into what we do.
Absolutely. And so, okay, Christopher, so I love, you're normally in my seat for doing your own events, but I've got you in the other seat now. And so I'm really curious to go behind the veil in how you lead your business. And is it possible to lead a business that feels good? Is it possible to keep your integrity, to stay healthy, to really belong in a nourishing community and succeed financially? Like, it feels like a unicorn to this audience. So how have you navigated that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, the most important thing that I've learned along the way is that your business must be aligned to your core values.
Mm.
And if your business is unaligned or malaligned to your core values, you're going to feel drained. Okay. You're going to feel tired. You're going to overgive. You're going to overdo. And in the end, you're going to feel separate from what you're doing. And I've been fortunate in the sense that because I went to a boarding school growing up for 10 years, and I was in the military and I went to the SEAL teams, I learned a lot of values that were not mine, right? So, for instance, like my relationship to time is very different than other people's. I have an instinctual sense of time. Other people have a fixed sense of time. And so, what I've done is made mistakes, owned those mistakes, and then made conversations with people that loved and cared about me that gave me really good direction. So I've navigated it by having mentors who are willing to reflect back to me things that I really don't want to hear. And, and give me advice about changes that I really don't want to make. And I think what's really important is love. I mean, it may seem amorphous or airy fairy, but if I love what I do, it always feels good to me. Even if I'm making a small deal or a medium deal or a big deal, it's a big deal because it's what I love to do. Like my core values are transformation, health, wellness, and communication. And so I aligned my business to honor my values every single day. And every single year, what I do is I change something in my business. So it's always different. So, and I challenge myself to work the least amount of time to produce the greatest amount of impact. All right, so I'm going to say that again. Work the least amount of time to produce the greatest amount of impact. Well, in order for me to do that, it means that every single year I'm going to have to upgrade myself. I'm going to have to increase my energy. My brain's going to have to be more neuroplastic. I'm going to have deeper, restorative, regenerative sleep. I'm going to have to be involved in things that make me feel good. And if I do all of that, then every day is a good day. If I do the opposite to that, then I'm setting myself up to do great work in the world, create profound impact, but feel less than amazing. And look, life for me is short. I understand. I had a mother who died when she was 20, when she was 29 and I was 7. My grandfather, he died early, and all of these people sort of disappeared. And so I got a real wake-up call into the value of time, right? And so for me, I navigate all the things that are challenging in my business in relationship to time.
Wow. Oh, that's profound. I love that. And perhaps someone can post that in the chat, about like, how can I have the greatest impact in the least amount of time? And even as you're talking, it's very interesting how you're sharing about it, like everything that you're doing in your life, whether it's deep restorative sleep, whether it's, nutrition, whether it's just spending time with community, all of those things that are nourishing to you, you do those things so that you can have the most amount of energy in the work that you're bringing into the world. And I'm curious, like, how many of us are actually leading that way? And then it will feel good rather than coming from a place of deprivation. So really profound. Thank you, Christopher, for sharing that. And so there's one more big burning question. It's a little more in kind of the masculine structure and strategy of business, because we have an audience who the biggest question they had is, how do I find qualified clients? And so I want to ask each of you what your marketing method is, so that our audience have some examples that can help them choose the path that feels most aligned to them and their work. So Ariel, how do you find qualified clients? How do they find you?
Over these last few years, since that initial question was posed to Phil, one of my greatest learning lessons in marketing is to not put all your eggs in one basket. And I did that very early on, that I was like, okay, I'm learning this one way to market just through email. And then if it wouldn't produce what I had hoped for, I was very let down. So I was going to say quickly, but maybe not so quickly, learned to market in a multitude of ways. And along with that, I also know, I heard on the last panel some of the women talking about what aligns with their human design, what aligns with their astrology, what's most unique and personal to them. And I know personally for me, what will always be the strongest method of marketing is human connection. I mean, I'm sure we can all go on and on about the time we spend behind these screens and these devices, and so many people are just craving human connection right now. So that's my greatest strategy, is just human connection.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything better. You know, how can I directly connect? And I think our visibility wounds can even show up in that space. So I love that, like the relationships and also having a multitude, not having all your eggs in one basket. So thank you for sharing that. And so Phil, how do you find qualified clients? How do qualified, how do people find you? What do you do? Oh, and I'll ask you to unmute.
You'd think I would have learned that by now. I'm kind of old school. So I've been marketing before there was such a thing as social media. And in marketing in those days, the question was, how do I let people know I exist and that I can better their lives? That was the question. And I came up with a lot of different strategies, and some worked and some fell flat on their face. But I'll tell you one that worked incredibly well, and we can't do this anymore. But there used to be this thing, dinosaurs will remember, called the Yellow Pages, where it was this big, thick book and it had every business. And if you're looking for a business, you go to the Yellow Pages. You look under accountants, you look under realtors. So I was running a personal training company with 14 trainers, but there was no heading for personal trainers. It wasn't really a thing at that time. So I met with the Yellow Pages guy and I said, I want to reach the people who are looking to change their bodies. They're not looking for personal trainers. So I took out an ad under health clubs, and it was a space ad. And it said, warning, 92% of the people who join health clubs never get the result they want. Before considering a health club, call Phil Kaplan at. And it just lit up my phone. Now, we can't do that anymore, but the example was to show that you got to find a way to be different than everyone else. And what I find is happening today is everybody's looking for the Facebook ad that works, the funnel that they can recreate. And if everybody's looking for it, it's hard for you to be unique. So, in line with what Ariel said, always, my strategy that I would teach in marketing was talk to 5 people a day about what you do for a living, period. And that's in Target, in the gas station, in Panera. And most people go, I don't know how to approach people. I know you don't because you haven't practiced it. But what you find is they do want to talk to you. Now, every once in a while, somebody goes, leave me alone. But it's 1 in 50. It's worth it. So that strategy never, ever, ever went away. So talk to 5 people a day about what you do for a living and what you can do for them. And the one thing I'll take that we have now that we didn't have then are lead magnets. So at least you can get a text. You go, you know what? I'm going to send you this book on how to change your body. Give me your text. Now you have a contact. But that never changes. Just talk to 5 people a day about what you do. And that's 1,000 people a year. What if you got 1,000 good leads a year? That would be a good investment, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing, I think a lot of people can feel slimy or salesy about that, but honestly, you can't stop me. Like I go and work out in the pool, we do these crazy surf workouts, and anytime anyone talks about anything, I'm like, oh, nervous system. Or they're like, oh, here's a business strategy for that. Like you cannot stop me. I can't mute it. I can't stop myself.
Right.
So that's the thing that you're here to bring, the thing that you see it everywhere. It should come very naturally. And I noticed my friend Jeff here, he walks around in downtown Malibu, and he's always got his eyes up, he's always making eye contact, and he says hello to everyone and how are you, even though it's a stranger. And he did that on the beach, and it was to Chris Martin and Dakota Johnson, right? He's like, hi, how are you? And so it's really interesting, and perhaps that's a little challenge to our nervous systems. To can we create social engagement, can we connect eye to eye and smile, and really that oh my goodness. Well, I'd be curious, Nicole, what you say about that. Go on, Phil.
I'm just curious, was that innate for you? Do you just have that ability innately, or did you have to develop it?
Oh gosh, when my mum always taught me to talk to everyone. I saw her talking to royal family members and homeless people, all the same. But when it came to my business, there was a few years where I didn't want to come off salesy, and so I would censor myself. And so for me, there was a moment of like, seeing Jeff, like going around and going, hey, how are you? And then, they're like, I'm looking for a house. And he's like, oh, I do real estate. So there had to be a conscious effort on my part to stop censoring myself. So yes and no.
Because I think it's a fear. And when somebody like you, or when I tell people that, their initial response is, well, you can do that, but I can't. And here's what I've learned: leap over the fear. Like just say hello, eye contact, hello and watch what happens. And it's not immediate. The people go, hey, I want to buy your product. But over time, you realize people are saying hello back. They're smiling at me. They're interested. So I think when people hear me say that, they go, well, no, you can do that. I've got to get social media ads. You can do that too. But I think developing the skill set of approaching people is probably the best marketing skill you can have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, who in this audience is accepting this challenge? 5 people a day. Put 5 in the chat if you're accepting the challenge. So Nicole, have you, like, how do clients find you? You're in a different type of space, in a more therapeutic space. But how do you find qualified clients? What's your marketing model?
I would say the most effective way that I find clients is through speaking. It's either podcasts or in person.
Okay.
And I think part of that is because what I talk about is something that a lot of people don't always understand, or not, and no one's looking for trauma in their business. Like, that's not something that a lot of people are typically looking for. And so people really need to hear me speak and talk about, some of the frameworks that I use, including an emotional sustainability plan. Everybody has a marketing plan, a business plan, but very few people actually look at what emotional sustainability looks like for you. And so I do a lot of teaching around that. And I think people really kind of see themselves in my story, the story of the clients in my book. And that is one of the most effective ways that I get leads. Now, I will say that's how I do it. It may not work for everyone, but I think what I think is important is for you to recognize what works for you, because part of that emotional sustainability plan is marketing in a way that aligns with you, that feels is supportive to your nervous system, and that's going to be different, for every person. And so I always say what works for you will work for you. Just find what that is.
Oh, I love that so much. So a lot of speaking, a lot of like podcasting or showing up in interviews like this, a lot of, sharing, like using the power of your voice to
Yeah,
connect
personal
people.
referral too. And I mean, I've trained with Brene Brown and collaborated with her on projects, and so that doesn't hurt. Let's
Awesome.
be honest.
She's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like her, again, Deborah talked about this on the previous roundtable. Your community, your network, the people that you're connecting with will absolutely, make all the difference in your business. And I love that you've got something so unique in the therapy and how we can look at how our wounding and also put emotional resourcing plans in place for our launches and things like that, so that we can navigate our growth successfully. Because we've got those 2 things, the tension, right? We've got the tension of the nervous system trying to keep us safe and therefore trying to stay in the comfort of everything that is known. And then we've got this eudaimonic calling to grow. And so there in there is the tension. And so it's really beautiful that you go into that. And Chris, so I would love to hear, how do you find qualified clients in your business? What is your mechanism for that?
I mean, my mechanism is 24 years old.
Oh,
So,
perfect. Love
what I
that.
mean, what I mean by that is when I decided to create a 30-year plan, I sat down in prayer and I said, how do we do this? And, the divine basically said to me, look, if you're willing to co-create with me, we will create a biblical level miracle every day. And these people will shout off every mountaintop, and you're never going to have to market. And so I have what's called the gold standard of business. I don't market.
Wow.
I basically show up, create profound impact, co-create with this person that I'm working with, and they're going to naturally inspire other people because the changes and the depth of the change is so profound that the people that are in their sphere of influence want to know how they got to where they got to, which eventually leads them to me in some
Mm,
way, shape, or form. So I
wow.
wake up every day and there's a text from someone who I have no idea who they are and where they are. The majority of my clients, I live in LA, but I rarely work with someone who lives in Los Angeles. Almost everyone is flying in from somewhere.
Wow.
So what I would say to the people listening is if impact is the first priority in your business and money is second, you will always have money. Let me say that again. If impact is number one priority for you and money is second, you will always have money,
Mm,
right? Like money is easy to make if you have a business that's aligned to your values, and you show up and you give these people every single thing that you have, they're going to feel the love. They're going to make the changes. They're going to grow beyond their own limitations, their fears, their insecurities, their inner deficiencies. They're going to share with everyone who will listen, and they're going to guide those people to you without you ever having to take any action towards promoting yourself. So I promote through showing up and creating profound impact in other people's lives from a position of love without any expectation of anything in return.
Oh, so powerful. There are a couple of threads I want to pull out there, which is, I think first and foremost is that I think in the entrepreneurial space, a lot of people have this urgency and this sympathetic dominance of like, I got to make money right away for survival. And what I love hearing is that you sat in meditation and or in prayer, and you created a 30-year impact vision for your work. And so I love, like, you know, just that, the amount of spaciousness, like even as I say that, I can feel my body like expanding and calming, just having that longitudinal vision for what it is that you are bringing into the world. And then the second thing is focusing on the impact first, and how this is really showing up in not needing to have the yang efforting of going out there and marketing, but you have the best marketing of all, which is word of mouth. Like nothing will ever trump word of mouth. And so thank you so much for sharing that you know, it's so delightful, like waking up with messages and people reaching out to you and you're like, okay, where did you even come from? So having that divine feminine magnetism and having that, you know, what truly is manifestation. And I do want to add an add-on question here. So how does someone who's listening sit and vision their impact for over the next 30 years? What might that look like?
I mean, it looks like you're telling the universe that you're committed. And I think that whatever's going on in your body, whatever's going on in your heart, whatever's going on in your mind is communicating clearly daily with the forces that are unseeable with your physical eyes and yet are very obvious in the response and the results that you see happening in your life. And I think it's important to commit. It's like when someone's getting married, right? Does any woman on the panel want to marry a man who says, well, you know, we're going to get married, but I'm not sure how long I'm going to want to stay in this business with you, right? Like women want to marry a man who's committed to his vision of what their relationship and how it's going to unfold, and the vision that he has for her together as a couple. And so a business is the same. I've decided to marry myself to this form of impact that I wanted to help co-create with the divine for the benefit of myself, my family, my community, and my culture. And I think that when you are deeply rooted and understand who you are based on your values, and you build a value-based life, then it's going to be awesome for 30 years if that's your commitment.
Oh, beautiful. So I'm curious, for anyone in the audience that this is really speaking to, what are you hearing? What is landing? Share that in the chat. It really supports you to anchor that for yourself, but also really creates that sense of shared relationship and community that we have today. And we have just like 8 minutes left. And so I have some questions directly from the audience. And so for Ariel, we have a question from Marlene, who asks, is there a certain amount of time I should be setting aside to work on my business and or actually relax? I'm bone exhausted. What would you say to Marlene?
I'm going to say no to that. Is there a certain amount of time, you know, going back to what Phil said, coming back to center? I think every single person here is intuitive and can check in and tune in. So what that timeline will look like is different for everyone. Knowing that you have come back to a state of recovery, to a state of creativity, can act as the green light. Okay, now I'm ready to put some more, I'm going to say, quote, hustle in.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And And I actually want to invite Phil to kind of riff on this as well, because you've lived through an extraordinary personal healing, refusing a medical diagnosis and rebuilding your vitality through trust in your own body and wisdom. And so, for those of us who tend to push through exhaustion or the body's cues, what's the first step to shifting from control and force into restoration and trust?
I want to piggyback off something that Chris said, because it's enviable to be able to have a business where you thrill people and more people come to you. And that's the nature of mastery, right? But I think for most people, they don't know the steps to take to get there. So meditation is beautiful, connecting with the divine is beautiful. But in making this practical, there's a strategy that I teach in seminars, 4 steps. And I think this is the essence of business growth. Very simple: touch, compel, capture, thrill. So I'm tying together the marketing, the 5 people a day, the social media, the webinars, the podcasts. That's the touch phase. Somewhere along the way, you have to compel people. You got to go, well, here's what you're going to get. And then ultimately you got to capture, which means they say yes, but then you get to thrill. And the more thrill you get, the more it self perpetuates. And I think that's where Chris is at. But anybody can get to that point. You've just got to start somewhere. So it's got to start with the courage to take a leap, to have some conversations. Okay. I also want to mention, you mentioned it. So very short, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and
Wow.
it was a horrible diagnosis. It was a horrible moment. And I was given 3 medications. And the following morning, I woke up and I heard audibly, maybe the doctor was wrong. And that changed my life. I was a fitness guru. I was traveling the world doing seminars. And that threw me into this world where I started trying to find healing, true healing. And I met quacks and shamans and weirdos and bizarre people and some geniuses. And really, what I found is, number one, the diagnosis was wrong. It was mold toxicity. But having gone through that experience, I never knew what it felt like to be a patient. And the fact that the patient was able to get well without relying on what the doctor said, that was a game changer. And that's what kind of threw me into this field, this realm of medical fitness. So the question I'm going to answer now is related to that.
Yeah, well, it's really, it's touching on what you talked on before, but how can we lead from our body's cues when we're feeling that exhaustion and the old habit of pushing through? And how do we shift from that control and force into restoration and trust?
Parasympathetic recovery is a
Mm,
concept that people hear about. They understand sympathetic, parasympathetic. But most people who live their lives in stress have not truly been in homeostasis in years.
right.
And
Or
when they're
decade.
trying to run their business frantically, the best thing they could do is nothing. Now, I know this is hard. They go, how could I do nothing? But you've got to get to that place. Call it meditation, call it prayer. I think everyone who's gone through it will have a similar story where they spoke to God, where they heard from the universe, where they had a conversation. But that's done in center. So, as difficult as this sounds, you've got to get to a place where you get in touch with your soul and who you are and what your purpose is. And most people running their businesses have no idea. And another thing that Chris said earlier, he said, when you align with your core values, great. Many people have no idea what their core values are. So that in itself, becomes an exercise of internal exploration. So I would say if you're heading toward crisis, you've got to get to a place of nothing. And in that state of nothing, speak to yourself or the higher realm.
I love that. And to piggy on that, I get asked all the time. I just had the BBC reach out and ask if I could do a podcast. And it's so easy to say no because they're creating a podcast all about the shipwreck I was on, which is putting people into a sympathetic state of fear. And so it goes against my values, which is to regulate people's nervous system. So when you lead from your values, and thank you for opening that up, Christopher, it makes your filter very easy. Does this go towards my mission or is it in direct conflict with it? I'm looking at time. So Nicole, Yasmin asks, I feel the care I need for myself and how I care for others goes against what I need to do in order to be prosperous financially. How do I reframe my money beliefs to handle this? Okay, so what I'm hearing here from Yasmin is that being prosperous and her way of doing that seems to be in conflict for caring for herself and caring for the people in her family. So how would you support Yasmin?
I think the question I always ask is, who told you that? And to get curious about what that means for you. Um, because I believe those two things don't have to coexist, that you can actually take care of your family, be prosperous, and not harm yourself at the same time. And so I think challenging the belief is a very first thing, and always the secondary is, where have I heard this before? Where did this come from? Is this true? Is this mine? And am I gonna, disrupt it, or am I gonna comply with it? So I think some self-reflection on where that story came from, and if you would like to continue with that, is a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think sometimes I find the questions more interesting than even the answers. The questions can be very, very revealing. Oh my gosh, Christopher, I have like 3 questions I've got to ask. I want to ask you, and I've got to choose one. So you talk about stress plus time equals stroma, the hidden tension that quietly erodes health and potential. For entrepreneurs and leaders who are constantly under pressure, what are some of the subtle ways stress shows up in the body, and how can we begin to release it before it turns into a more chronic imbalance?
Okay, so stress plus time is, there wasn't a word that existed
Aha.
for me to explain things to my clients simply, like what was going on in their bodies and why they were struggling. And so I said, how do we figure this out? So I decided to reverse engineer disease. And what I came up to is that this idea that stress is something that accumulates over time.
Mm.
And if we look at stress over time, we can say that it's generational. And if it's generational, that it has to live somewhere in the body that speaks to generations, and that would be in the epigenetic profiles. And so when someone is struggling as an entrepreneur and they're feeling exhausted or they're feeling burned out, their body is always giving them micro signals, and a micro signal is a headache. A micro signal is a stiff back. A micro signal is waking up in the morning feeling like you have really heavy eyes. A micro signal is like you're too tired to brush your teeth. A micro signal is you're choosing fast food over healthy food, right? And so if you have a headache, or you have any kind of joint pain, or you're having difficulty falling asleep, you're having difficulty staying asleep, your body is clearly telling you that you're processing more stress than it can handle in a 24-hour period. And so the question is, how do you create a successful pattern interrupt? Well, when you look at stress and you look at pain, there's something that exists in between those two things, and it's called tension. And tension is what's stored in the fascia, which is connected to your pancreas and your spleen, or stored in the muscles, which is connected to your stomach, right? And so the first thing that anyone can do is they can create a successful pattern interrupt by choosing whole foods, right? That's super simple. The second thing, and I think the most important thing, is they can get into breath work and they can get into body work. And so they can either get a massage. Look, if you don't have money for a massage, it's easy. Sit down and stretch for 20 or 30 minutes or 15 minutes, like whatever you have to do to remove the stress from your body, because whatever's in your body is in your life. Well, if you understand that metaphor, then it makes it really simple to go, oh, well, if I have these things in my life that are out of alignment, all I need to do is focus in on my body where I feel I'm holding stress and tension, remove the tension and stress out of my body, and it removes it from my life.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. It's really echoing a theme from all of our experts of how the body leads our business. And what I've really, really enjoyed about this roundtable, and I'm so curious, audience, everyone who is here and so active in the chat, what are you? I'm really curious what you are garnering from this panel. And I love that we've both been talking about physiological and psychological health on this roundtable, and something that is so essential. How do we use our how do we lead from our body? How do we lead from, okay, where am I feeling the tension in my body? Is this indicating that it's more, what imbalance is this showing in my body? And how can I resolve that in order to then be showing up more fully in my work? So I'm really excited. Each of these experts, I know we're a couple of minutes over, but each of these experts has an incredible free gift. Now, normally they charge for these things. They're so generously gifting them to you. And I highly encourage you to grab whichever, to grab each of these. So Ariel, what is your free gift and who is it for?
The free gift is a quantum biofeedback session. So it's one-on-one. You and I will spend some time. I have a feeling most of you understand when I talk about the quantum field or the source field or this electromagnetic field. So through a voice recording and a quick photo, we will get a reading of your personal biofield or your aura. And from that, we'll get some insight into all kinds of areas from chakras, spinal energy, organs, body systems, all kinds of areas. And that can serve as insight. Not only will we run a frequency back to help bring balance to all of those areas, but it can serve as insight so that you can move forward in your business from an aligned place of integrity and healthy nervous system. So the link is there. I've opened up my calendar for a few people to schedule that.
Awesome. The link is in the chat for you there. Phil, what is your free gift for our audience and who is it really for? Oh, you're muted. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
I just like hearing you ask. I just want to tell everybody that that quantum biofeedback, I was introduced to it about 10 years ago. I introduced Ariel to it. I was afraid of it at first. Like, how could it know stuff? But it is mind-blowing. So anybody who has the chance right now, take advantage of that. I've learned and I teach that ultimately we can recreate our bodies and we can create biologically younger cells. So I have a book that can be delivered electronically and it's called Recreating You. So that's my free gift.
Fantastic. Awesome. That's in the chat. Please grab that. Nicole, what's your free gift for our audience and who should grab this today?
So any entrepreneur, founder who's met a level of success that they thought would actually make them feel better, see themselves differently, and it didn't quite do that for them. And so they're curious, could there be something I'm missing here? And oftentimes that is some kind of childhood trauma or wounding that is playing out in those systems within your business. So if you're curious about that, if you want to assess it, my trauma and entrepreneurship assessment tool is my free gift to you all. And I do want to let you know, the people who sign up for that today, we're also going to send you a free login to my 3 Whys ebook course. So you're actually going to be getting a twofer.
Oh, amazing. So great. And I think that's really interesting to look at where trauma may be showing up in entrepreneurship. Thank you for sharing that. Christopher, what is your free gift for our audience and who will really benefit from that?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm going to say I think everyone will benefit from it, but it's called the Stress-Free Starter Kit, and they're going to get a Bestercise. A Bestercise is a bioenergetic self-transformational sequence, and this one is connected to the large intestine. The highest function of the large intestine is organization, utopian principles, and the ability to complete on things that we start. And it affects the colon and the health of the colon. And so I know that men compared to women struggle more with constipation. And so I created a Bestercise for them to be able to open that channel. And then they're going to be able to get a module from the 8 Stepping Stones to Inner Freedom. And there they're going to be able to transmute negative things that they have been projecting onto themselves, where they've been overly critical, where they've been self-judgmental, when they've been disapproving of themselves too harshly, and we'll be able to lower that and get that part of themselves to relax. And then I have a song from my album called Heart and Soul, and the song is called Freedom, which will be a really great song to meditate to, or breath work, or shaking medicine, whatever you want to do. And so they'll get access to the True Body Intelligence membership portal and be able to surf around in there and find things that are good for them.
Wow, so generous. Oh, that sounds phenomenal. So we're really taking your care of your physical and your mental health through this roundtable. So absolutely grab those gifts that are in the free gift in the chat for you there. Ariel, Phil, Nicole, and Christopher, thank you so much for being so generous and going deeply into kind of behind the veil of your entrepreneurial journey and empowering this audience today. How incredible were these speakers? Pop in the chat what your takeaway is, how this was for you. So incredible, right? So thank you for showing up today. We are back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, which is 12 p.m. Eastern time for yet another roundtable. And I'm curious if you are hearing the through threads from all of these incredible entrepreneurs who have these beautiful healing businesses, and they're really showing up to empower you to be able to do the same. So if we want to unmute, we'll say goodbye, and I'll look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Bye, loves. Bye, bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. Thank you. Bye.